It's 3 a.m. in the morning and shit has just hit the fan. I don't know, maybe your partner left you, or you found out you have an illness of some sort, or maybe there's something going on with your kid. Maybe one of your parents died. I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden you need to talk to somebody. Who do you call? If the answer is I don't know, then you need a ride or die friend. When I was a kid, I had a lot of friends, and it was much easier to make friends back then. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was in school and I had a lot of other kids around me, and I would sit next to somebody in my classroom and maybe borrow a piece of paper from them. And the next thing I would know that we would be sitting at lunch together and then playing out on the playground, and we would just become friends. I would invite them over to my house. They would invite me over to their house. We'd have sleepovers, and it was just a whole lot easier back then. As an adult, I found it was getting harder and harder to have friends. And a lot of it had to do with just the changes in life that I was going through and my friends were going through. Like, I got married, I had a kid, I had a career, and I just didn't have a whole lot of time. And neither did my friends have a lot of time. And as a result, we just grew further and further apart until it just became weird to contact them again. Nevertheless, I still needed a friend. I still needed somebody that I could hang out with and talk to and share life experiences with. Sure, I have my wife and she was great, but sometimes you need to have somebody besides your partner that you can talk to. I realized when my life was falling apart, the thing that was missing was I didn't have a friend. I didn't really have anybody to talk to about what was going on in my life. So maybe you find yourself in a similar position and you think about who do I call or who do I hang out with, or you just realize that you don't have very many friends or any friends at all for that matter. How do you make friends as an adult? This is what I did. I now have a very close friend. I have a few very close friends actually, but I have a best friend, and this is how we became friends. The first thing you want to be able to think about when considering who you're going to be friends with is proximity. Who's close by? Now, I have a lot of really good friends and close friends that live in other parts of the world, but we really have to schedule those kind of Zoom calls and things like that to keep up with each other. Whereas having a friend who's close by, we can be a little bit more spontaneous. I can call them up and say, hey, my wife's going out of town. You want to have dinner tonight? Or, I'm not doing anything. Let's go hang out and do something together. Proximity is a very important piece when you're thinking about creating a friendship. So who are the people around you? In my case, my best friend was somebody who was married to one of my wife's friends. And we had met as acquaintances. And I thought to myself, as I was thinking about having a friend, I thought to myself, this guy might be a good friend. And so from place of proximity, he was there. And that was what started us becoming friends. The second thing that I needed to do was have intentionality. Have you ever watched kids make friends? Little kids make friends, for example, like on the playground or whatever. One kid comes up to another friend and he says, hey, will you be my friend? There's a lot of intentionality behind that. Now, as adults, that feels a little weird, but there's something similar that you can do to create that intentionality about creating a friend. With my friend, my best friend, for example, again, he was a friend. He was married to my wife's friend. And so I met him. And one day I just reached out to him and said, hey, you want to go grab a cup of coffee? And he said, sure. And so we went out and we had a cup of coffee and we had a conversation. And it was a really good conversation. And I said to him, I said, I don't know about you, but I find that I don't have a lot of friends, especially male friends. I have a lot of coworkers and people in my life like that, but I don't really have any friends. I'm just wondering, do you have friends? Who's your best friend? And he said, I'm struggling with the same thing. I don't really have anybody in my life that I would say is my best friend or somebody that I can just go hang out with on a whim. And So I said, man, let's start hanging out together. Let's be purposeful and intentional about creating a friendship. Would you be up for that? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And so even though it took a little bit of courage for me to make that ask, because there's so many of us as adults who don't have a lot of friends, you're probably going to find that the person that you're asking to be your friend probably doesn't have friends either. And they're going to be really grateful for the fact that you want to be friends and that you're being intentional about it. The next thing we had to do is be consistent. Consistency is everything when it comes to developing any kind of relationship. You not only have to have proximity, intentionality, but you need to be consistent. And so what me and my friends started to do was every Saturday morning, we would get together for coffee. And most of the time, we would just talk about what was going on in our life or what was going on in our work. And sometimes we were just goofing off and making jokes, cracking jokes, and that kind of thing. So that was probably 80% of the time. But what really started to come about as a result of this friendship was like that 20%, that 20% of time where one of us or both of us were struggling with something in our life, maybe struggling with our relationship or struggling with, one of our kids or struggling with our job, to be able to have somebody to talk to and bounce ideas off of and get feedback and just have somebody listen and to feel heard and understood. That was everything. And that's what really started to cement our friendship was that 20% of the time. The other thing I think it's really important to have in developing a friendship as an adult is compatibility. You need to find somebody who is generally within your same age group, generally within your same demographics, have a lot of the same similar kind of beliefs and political beliefs maybe, or religious beliefs or whatever kind of thing like that. I think it's important to be compatible because without compatibility, it just makes having a friendship that much more difficult. And not saying that you can't have a friend who has different political or religious views than you. You can. I have plenty of those. But it's really helpful when you have some similarities and compatibility to continue and create a deeper friendship. The last thing I think you need to do is you need to find somebody with reciprocity. There's nothing worse than you feeling like you're always the one who's trying to get the other person to go hang out. If you're always calling them and saying, hey, we're going to get together this week, or hey, what's going on? And they're not reciprocal, they don't reach out to you first, or they don't ask you how you're doing. Well, that's going to get really difficult after a period of time. You need to have reciprocity in the relationship. That's not always easy to find. In fact, you might have to go through those first steps a number of times before you find the person that offers the reciprocity back. If you want to have a friend, the best thing for you to do is be a friend. So practice these things in your life, and I think you'll find it will change your life. I'm Chuck Chapman. Thanks for tuning in.